A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend, Constitutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's L-E-N-A-R-D. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and an occasional guest type podcast. Really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! Hello, everyone. I have with me today Kirk Beck, a.k.a. Captain Kirk. No, not William Shatner or Patrick Stewart or, I forget the guy from Quantum Leap. I really loved him in the Enterprise version as Captain Kirk, but none of them. Kirk Beck. And we'll get into why he's here. But first I had asked him how he was doing, and he went into a story of how he was out campaigning today, and also a story about how he'd been to Detroit, since this is Detroit-based. So let's let him go into that. How you doing today, Kirk?
I'm doing well. Boy, you've got a lot of energy there. I'm going to enjoy this, I can tell.
So you were out campaigning for who?
Well, David Serpa is running for Congress out here in the 39th Congressional District, and we're trying to convey to people it's not left, it's not right, it's uniting together on the things that we should share in common. Like, why aren't we dealing with water? We have a drought in California.
Yeah, we get mostly self-induced by eating policy, but yes. So, I agree. And I like what Reagan said. I put it in my Constitutionalist book in the intro of why I was inspired to write it. Reagan, I created the Constitutionalist term because left, right, conservative, liberal, all have knee-jerk negative connotations to them now. So I created Constitutionalist politics. Are you a Christian? Then here is the Bible and how it should apply. All right. Full context, not warping one scripture or another. And Reagan said, I don't want to hear left, right. I want up, down. And I agree with him. Does it lift up we the people, or does it lift up the government and downtrodden our rights? I agree. Sounds like you agree.
Oh, you preach it. You're doing a good job. I could listen to you for a while.
And also, while you were in the green room before I hit record, you were in Detroit. Go ahead and give us that story.
Wow, I tell you, I started writing a book 10 years ago about a fictional police officer who loves people and treats everybody with respect. And I made these stories up for my son because I've always been, ever since the Vietnam War, I've been very anti-war. And my wife would say, you need to write a book on that. And I said, well, I would like to write it, but I don't think it's all that practical. I don't know if there really are cops like that. Yeah. And by providence, I found Dale Brown in Detroit. And Dale Brown was running an organization then called I'll get the name in a minute because he's since sold that company. He's got another one. But basically, it was Threat Management Center Detroit. So I found out about him. I flew all the way out to Detroit and wanted to ride with him for one day. And he taught me so much about respect for individuals. He gave me classic examples that help people understand how this works. And Dale Brown had a website at the time, and he had 7 police officers from the Detroit PD. I think 6 of them were African American. And they all said the same thing. why were we not trained like this? Because if we were trained like this, we wouldn't have so many problems. We wouldn't have so many people getting shot. We wouldn't have so many lawsuits. Okay.
Well, we are a lawfare society. Somebody will always claim they're a victim, whether they are or not, and try to sue for money. But yeah, and I have in the notes here. So I take it this is leading to and is soon to publish Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. Is that what we're getting to?
That's true. It's the book is done. It just needs to be published. And I'm working through some things with professional writers because I really would like this book not to be dragged down by my inability to maybe put a good narrative together, because I've got tremendous information in the book. Many things that have happened to me personally over the many years that I've been in court. Also, the police officer friends that I've had who share the same kind of respect for human life that I do. That all this came together in the book, and I think the book is going to be a great help to many, many people.
Well,
I modeled it after Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. All my chapters are very short, and each chapter has some purpose, some understanding of law or human kindness that will make it a very easy book to read. You could read a chapter probably in 10 minutes.
I think you're going about it right. In my How to Write a Book and Get It Published Hints, Tips, and Techniques book, I say that, this whole thing, write about what you know, use personal experience when and where you can, and fictionalize it. So you did that right. Also, you mentioned you didn't steal source material, but you borrowed someone's style. You patterned a bit after somebody, and that is intelligent. That's not theft. That's homage. And in fact, I hope you will throw a shout out to her and that book in your book, saying you were inspired in part by that. She deserves, a bit of credit for inspiring you in part, your writing style. But at any rate, and people who know the show, at any rate, it's an ongoing joke. I say it all the time. It's like, it's like ahs and ums. I do at any rate as a segue thing. It's an ongoing gag now. So indeed, at any rate, we jumped into nitty gritty. Let's backpedal to the original usual first question before we get to your book, How to Parent the Passive Rebel. Who, like, the Who song, who are you? Who? Give us the 411. You're old enough to know what 411 means. Give us the 411, where you were born, raised, where you're at now, all that kind of stuff.
Born in 1949 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm a Dakotan, grew up in a city of about 80,000 people, no Hispanics, 2 Black families in the whole city.
Not very diverse, right?
No, but boy, did we love those guys, because they were great athletes. They were great athletes.
Yeah, you wanted them on your basketball team. Not to be stereotypical, but indeed, I don't know them, so just don't get on me about the statement. But I mean, there are stereotypes for a reason, right? So you're in Christie Nome State, and again, I mentioned not very diverse. Diversity, if used in the real sense, is not a 4-letter word. It is just how the left use it, by just skin tone related, never diversity of thought. That is kind of bad. But anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go on.
Okay, so I went to school and graduated an engineering degree from South Dakota Tech. I got the opportunity to play football there for 4 years, and actually played in a game that was later called the upset of the decade. Later on, I found out they actually, in Rapid City, South Dakota, they upped it to the upset of the century. What a wonderful thing to be able to play in such in a football game like that and remember it these many 52 years later. So I graduated. I went to work for Shell Oil Company. I lived in Denver, Colorado for a couple of years. I got married, lived in Fort Collins, Colorado for about 10 more years, and had 3 young boys. All of them were born, 2 of them were born in Colorado. The third one was born in California. I've been in California now for about 37 years. I hasten to tell people California has 58 counties, and most of them are red. And we have 40 plus sheriffs that don't have any time for our governor. They resist him as best they can. And what I often tell people...
Oh, you're north? You're Burgum then. I said Nome. I thought you said you're North Dakota.
No, that's South Dakota. That's
Is it?
Christy Nome, yes.
Okay. But I thought you said him, which made me think Burgum then. Okay, I'm sorry. I got myself confused. I apologize.
Okay. Well, I'm out here in California now with Gavin Newsom. And he's a real nuisance, and we deal with him all the time. But as an example, oh my gosh, so sorry about that. Forgot to turn this thing off. I'll turn that off.
So, that's all right. My phone rings all the time during records.
Yeah, well, shouldn't.
Hey, it happens. You can't always remember to turn them off before.
Okay, well, it's off now. Okay, so I want. By the way, before I go any farther, I want to say that I have a free gift to anybody who is at the end of this interview that I'd like to give them. And I'll talk about that a little bit later.
I made a note. We'll be sure to get to that at the end.
So it was when I was in California, I have always been a person who is very curious. Maybe I should have gone to law school. And well, I did go to law school for 1 semester, but I didn't like the kind of law that I was learning. But I've always had a real interest in politics and the law, and especially something called American exceptionalism. It is not the American people. It is a system of government that our founding fathers gave us that is unique in the history of the world. And it wasn't until I found myself in court on a part of a jury pool, and I was there, and I was sitting right behind the defendant, and the defendant was making an objection, and the judge was very, very blunt with him. He said, "Sir, you had an opportunity to have an attorney. You've chosen not to have an attorney. Therefore, you have to know all the rules." He's scolding him in front of all of us. But the entire time that he's being scolded, the defendant is shaking his head very negatively. So I've been in court enough times to recognize I might know what's going on here. 2 days later, I'm on the jury selection, and the judge makes his standard 3 caveats. And the one that I remember is the one where he said, the fact that the defendant is defending himself against 17 felonies, would that inhibit you from making a just verdict? Well, I didn't say anything, but as soon as he got done, he said, "Juror number 14, I see by your body language you might have some problems with what's going on here." And for 5 minutes, he allowed me to elaborate. After which, he said, "I think we need to take a short break." And when he came back, he said, Juror 14, you can leave.
And you've already tainted the other
Yeah,
jurors, probably,
exactly.
right?
I got what I wanted to have said. I knew I wasn't going to be on this jury because I always ask questions. Unusual though, I came back the next day and sat right behind the defendant. I wanted to get the jury's attention. Like, what's this guy doing in here again? He was supposed to go home. And I went out to lunch with the defendant. And I found out that he had actually gone out with an attorney to see if they could work together. He didn't want to give up his right to defend himself. He knows, like I know, like you probably know, that when you have an attorney in the courtroom, you have given up your right to talk. You are rendered incompetent by the court, and the attorney does all the speaking in your behalf. Well,
good or bad, and it's not always good.
He did not want that. So he went out to talk with the attorney, see if they could work together. He came back into the courtroom. The judge asked the attorney, well, can you work together? And the attorney totally blindsided him by saying this: Your Honor, based upon my conversation with the defendant, I highly recommend a full psychiatric evaluation. Wow. Wow.
What happened to attorney-client privilege? He didn't pay him yet, but they were talking that still should have applied.
So I'm talking further with the defendant, and I found out that I was right. He didn't want to give up his ability to speak in his behalf. But then he said this: I'm trying to defend myself based upon the constitutional principles that I'm learning from Jack and Margie Flynn. Well, I don't know who they are. Well, 10 years later, I'm a student of Jack and Margie Flynn and their affidavit process, which we call the power of paper. And we've used this effectively. I personally have used it effectively 5 times over the last 6 years. And Jack and Margie Flynn have said, and now I believe, since they've been doing this for 6 decades, they have over 10,000 victories. Now, I'd be happy to go into my victories one at a time.
I don't know that we've got all day to do that, right? Yeah.
Well, I can fly through them very quickly.
Okay.
But so here I am in California, living in a most regulated state in the union. It's crazy in many respects, but as I said earlier, we have a lot of good sheriffs. We've got a lot of good people, and we believe that with the understanding of using the law, basically without attorneys, and just holding government accountable to their oaths of office and to the higher law, the Constitution, we can affect great changes. And what we're trying to do here in Riverside is change one county to basically being a constitutional county, not because the governments did something, but because we, the people, know the law.
And we, the people, are the bosses if we bother to get off our butts and exert that authority. Yes.
Exactly. It's not they, the elected, it's we, the people. And when we, the people, are armed with the law and can use it judiciously, then we can gain great latitude and increase in liberty wherever we are. So I applied the Margie and Jack technique with just a traffic ticket. I went to court. Well, what I did is I wrote the police officer a nice letter and explained what he did wrong, but I sent it certified mail.
Right. You gotta have that paper trail. Yes.
Right. Plus, he's not used to getting letters, period, from somebody who gives a ticket for a rolling stop. But then he has to sign for it. That's really unusual. He read my letter, probably didn't think too much of it. But then I did step 2. I took my letter and basically turned it into an affidavit. And this affidavit says 2 things, one at the beginning and one at the end, where we're notifying the officer or the government official or the corporate CEO that they have a responsibility to answer the affidavit. And remember, you're under oath, not only because you took an office, but also because any affidavit has to be sworn before a notary to be true. Otherwise, you could be subject to perjury. So I specified exactly what the officer did wrong at the stop. And almost all traffic stops violate certain rules of the law. So I put that in there, and then I told him, and these are the key words, you have 30 days to rebut with particularity, specific to what I put into my affidavit. Otherwise, everything in it can be used against you, Officer Salonger, in any court in the United States. Now, when he gets that by certified mail, and he signs for it, and he looks at it, now I am pretty sure that he runs that up to legal. And legal takes a look at it, and legal basically comes back and says, we got bigger fish to fry than this guy. Kind of just let him go. It's not worth the hassle. So I went to court with my witness. I always take a witness whenever I go to court. And I watched here comes the deputy. Good. We're going to have, not going to be one of those that I win by default. I'm going to win this time because he's here. And he walked in, he looked at me, and he gave something to the bailiff. The bailiff gave it to the judge. The judge looked at it and he said, Mr. Beck, are you here? Yes, Mr. Beck, you may leave. Your case has been dropped. Okay, now I walked out and I realized, hey, these 2 people, Margie and Jack Flynn, they know what they're talking about, because this just saved me $240. Granted, I had to have something notarized, and I had to have it certified mail, and I had to go to court.
Yeah, a couple bucks here and there, but all of this is indeed describing the importance of power of paper, as you said, because if you'd have just gone to court and tried to argue all those things, they're just going to blow you off.
Exactly, as I've done 4 or 5 times previously. As I tell people, I'm a recidivist when it comes to rolling stops. I just can't stop not stopping. So I've never had a speeding ticket in my life. I don't drink, so you don't have to worry about DUI.
Like Justin Timberlake.
but I have a problem with stopping when I look 50 yards that way and 50 yards that way.
And there's nothing to be seen, right? I'm with you on that. I'm with you.
Especially the cop who's hiding. You can't see him either. But he put the light on you. And this started back in Colorado many, many years ago with my first rolling stop. And every time I go to court and I try to fight with whatever different means I always try to appeal to the Constitution. But they don't listen to you without the paper.
Where there's a paper trail, it's in evidence now, as opposed to the transcript that nobody's going to pay attention to either.
Right. Now, there's a special sentence in the Declaration of Independence that I always bring with me to these interviews. Thomas Jefferson wrote, quote, he, speaking of the king, he has combined with others, speaking of the colonial governors and parliament, he, combined with others, has subjected us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. That's not the United States Constitution, because that came 11 years later. Jefferson is talking about the common law. Subjected us to a jurisdiction unacknowledged by our laws and given his assent to acts of pretended legislation. Get this. There is such a thing as color of law. There's such a thing as legislation that's not constitutional, therefore it's not law. It's a statute. When I went into court those many times, I went into statutory jurisdiction. I
And
didn't go in.
just as if ordinances also are
Right.
not law. There are ordinances and different.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Joseph M. Leonard, host of Constitutionals, taking a brief moment to thank myarchit.com. Together we share the Christian and family value of honoring family. myarchit.com helps you do that. Preserving family memories online also, therefore, can be shared online. Think of myArchit like a Noah's Ark for images, audio, video, preserving, honoring your family. Thank you again to the folks over at myarchit.com.
They can become law, but they're not necessarily law until they're adjudicated to be constitutionally valid. And most of our statutes are not. Whenever you're in court where there's not a victim, you're in statutory jurisdiction. You might ask, why am I here? There's no criminal. There's no crime. There's no victim. I was in court one time and I said that, Your Honor, the police officer cannot fill out a verifiable complaint. Yes, he can. No, he can't. Yes, he can. I'm saying he can. And he did, and that's the law in my courtroom. And I got upset, but she's totally right. I'm in statutory jurisdiction. Under statutory jurisdiction, that police officer can write a verifiable complaint. But under common law, he cannot. Only a human being breathing with blood flowing in their veins can fill out a verifiable complaint in common law jurisdiction. So I tell people I learn law by doing law. I go to court and sometimes I lose. Sometimes, well, most of the time I lose. Not anymore, but I used to lose all the time. And I was in court one time on a misdemeanor because this time I did something stupid. I had one of my rolling stop tickets and I was so upset with it that I didn't pay the fine. So they suspended my license and now I got another rolling stop and now it's a misdemeanor and I'm in court with an actual district attorney over there and she's coming after me. Well, she made a couple of mistakes herself and I brought one to the judge's attention and he said, well, okay, you're going to have to explain that more. So I began to explain it, and he let me go for a while, and he said, no, wait a minute, we're going to have to stop right there. Now, I said, I go to court to learn law. This judge, he had no necessity to do this, but he must have been a little bit impressed with what I was saying because he said this, Mr. Beck, you make some very good points. Nevertheless, that's not why we're here today. You should have brought that up by way of a pretrial motion. There you go. That's where you bring the common law in.
And again, the power of the paper, the pretrial motion you could have and should have done in writing. And I could see how knowledgeable you are, and we could talk about this for probably 6 hours, but I try to keep my shows to around 30 minutes so people will actually listen. So we've wet their whistle. So we'll get to how people can reach out. And you mentioned Jack and Margie Flynn's information. They could check into that, of course. But so before I get on to, because I want to touch on how to parent the passive rebel. But before I do, I want to remember, for those looking at the behind the scenes video, yes, you see me wearing my Never Forget 9/11. That is because we are recording during the week of 9/11, even though this will air later. And the other thing is, I got to try to, they say when you're in a hole, stop digging. Well, I got to try to dig my hole out of the basketball comment. All I'm saying is that it's anecdotal, but me as a white dude growing up, all the black friends I had and people I've ever known that are black have always been indeed better basketball players than I. So yes, I threw out the stereotype. It is certainly not always true. If you get an Urkel, he's probably not a good basketball player. So, but again, please, can we be reasonable here? But I'm saying this as a way of an apology and an explanation, because I know the internet, somebody will, oh my God, did you hear what he said? Right, kind of thing. But anyway, now that I've got that out of the way, tell us about how to parent the passive rebel.
My desire was to write the book about Officer Hansen, but I needed to learn how to write books. So I got online and I found one of these organizations that help you go through the process of self-publishing.
Like my how to write a book and get it published.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to learn how to do this, and in the process they said, we want you to write a book, a very short book. Well, I had something that I've carried with me for 40 years as a teacher. I ran a private school back in Colorado, and I had this wonderful young man in my class named Doug. And Doug taught me that the Bible's true. The Bible has great application.
Amen. Thanks for sharing that especially on this show.
Yeah. Well, Doug was a passive rebel. He came to class every day and he had all these different magic tricks that he was working on, Rubik's Cube, and I kept confiscating them. And he was in the school, the students had individual curriculum, and they had modules in science, history, Bible, mathematics, and English. And they were supposed to get a module done, at least one a week, not each subject, but at least one module every week. Doug had been in the classroom for 17 weeks, and he got 5 modules done. I went to the pastor and I said, this is almost like theft. We're taking money from the parents. He's not doing anything. I want this young man, I want him disenrolled. The pastor got the mother in. She started crying. And the pastor came back and said, no, I want to keep him in there. I said, okay, I've been thinking about this. I'll keep him in the school under one condition, that Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, he goes home with me. And there's only one rule. According to the Bible, if a man does not work, neither does he eat.
Amen.
So if
unwilling versus unable. Yes.
Yeah. So if Doug doesn't get his work done, he doesn't eat. And then I'll make sure he doesn't eat when he goes home. And I took Doug home with me. He went all day long. I said, Doug, if you want to play with your Rubik's Cube all day long, I don't care. Because the rule is, and you know what the rule is. Yeah, that's fine. So it's 7 o'clock at night. I'm sitting with my family at home, and I said, Doug, do you have your work done? No. Well, Doug, you can't eat. I'm not hungry. What? Okay. So 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up, and I took a seat right next to the refrigerator. And about 6:10, out comes Doug, and he didn't say hi. He went right to the refrigerator. Because I told him, I said, this is your house. You come here, anything in the refrigerator, it's fine. Go ahead and have what you want. I said, Doug, is your work done? He says, no. I said, well, Doug, you know the rule. Yeah, but I'm hungry. Yeah, I know you're hungry, so you better get your work done. And he went back to his room. I took him to school with me at 9 o'clock in the morning. He brought everything to me. We checked it. Yep, it's all done. I said, Doug, the lady's waiting for you down in the lunch hall. So go down there and eat. That was it. I think I had one other time in the 7 weeks that Doug lived with me, and he always went home with his family on the weekend. And of course, he never got anything done on the weekend. But
because they were enablers.
Yes, exactly. So, but it worked perfectly. In I think the 7 or 8 weeks that he was with me, he got 14 or 15 modules done because he was really quite an intelligent young man.
He just didn't have initiative.
Yeah. And once we put him in gear, he worked out just fine. And I think, well, how many people, because in my book, I point out 5 things you don't want to do. These are the worst things you can do. And I said the worst one of all is ignore it. Just ignore it.
Right.
A lot of parents just ignore the problem.
Yeah.
They just let Johnny go to school and learn anything.
Well, both of these books sound like something I definitely recommend people get the currently available, right? How to Parent the Passive Rebel, and coming, Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. But I do indeed want to wrap it up. So the proverbial, required last question, where do people reach you? And of course, the add-in of the free gift.
Okay, the free gift will be a template of the affidavit that I use with some descriptions as to how to use it. You can get that at affidavitsecrets.com/Detroit. So we'll know that people came from this show.
Yep.
And
you got your first customer before this will even air.
Okay, so be it. So that's how you can get that book. Well, not the book. That's how you'll get in touch with us and begin the process of learning how to use the affidavit process. Because quite frankly, if this snowballs across America, the government is going to be very wary of stepping outside the box.
Yeah.
Because we can win with the power of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the problem. Again, as we both said, we, the people, are the real bosses, and we got to stop being so lazy and refusing, like Doug, to have any initiative to do anything for themselves.
A lot of it is also a lack of courage. We seem to have a frightful condition regarding government. We don't want to contend with it. My gosh, the country was birthed because men and women were willing to bleed for liberty.
And that's why we're seeing more and more tyranny here. We refuse to nip it in the bud and just keep letting it grow.
Why not use paper rather than guns?
Amen. I'm with you on that. Absolutely. The paper of the ballot, when and where we can, and the power of paper through the affidavit. Thank you, Captain Kirk Beck, for coming on the show. This was very informative. I've heard some of these things in a different way. I like the way you laid it out, and I really appreciate, I hope the listeners will too, that free offer to help get them started.
Thank you. Goodbye now.
Thank you for having tuned in for Constitutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. all substance, no fluff, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help.
Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM is your conservative flamethrower. Weekdays, Steve Gruber starts things off at 6 a.m. Gruber gives his perspective on the issues of the day. At 9 a.m., Glenn Beck blazes the airwaves with his nationally syndicated program. From noon to 3, it's Dennis Prager. At 3 o'clock, it's Wham's own Thayrone X. On the Edge, Thayrone tells it exactly as he sees it. At 6, it's The Dana Show, your conservative alternative. At 8, don't miss Joe Pags. Weekends are filled with conservative talk as well. Fingers Malloy, Thomas LeDuc, The Abolitionists Roundtable, A Moment of Clarity with Pastor Rick, Your American Heritage with Ed Bondarenka, Dave Janda's Operation Freedom, and Dick Kupke's Trigger Talk. You can even get links to Wham podcasts from Dave, Dick, and of course Thayrone, all from their pages on our website, whamradio.com. Keep it locked on Wham Radio, 1600 AM and 92.7 FM in southeastern Michigan, and whamradio.com anywhere in the world.